Hey guys, it's Deena. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday this evening. Let's see, I'm just waiting for a couple of people to come in. Tonight's subject is going to be, are you proud or ashamed of slavery? Hey, I got a couple people coming in now. I got one viewer and oh, two. Uh-oh, it's growing. Hey guys. Hey. Welcome to the Dina Jacobs live stream here at flynubianqueen.com, right here on Facebook every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern time. I'm so glad to see we have about 13 people watching right now. Okay, I see those numbers going up. We got a hot topic, a hot discussion tonight. Are you proud or ashamed of slavery? I had some great comments a little bit earlier today. I posted this, and I'm going to try to pull it up right now. I posted this question on the Fly Nubian Queen homepage. And I had a couple people make some comments, and I want to read those to you guys. Just give me a second here to pull it up. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please look at the like, share, hit that share, hit that subscribe button. We love the fact that you guys are here supporting us on the FlyNubianQueen.com network. Let's see if we can pull up the comments. Give me a second here. I can't seem to find them right now. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Hold on, y'all. Almost there. Definitely put your comments in. There we go. I found it. Okay. So if you guys want to get your business going, you should check out flynubianbusiness.com, and we would love to have your support with our gear. Check out some of our gear, which is fnq.com. All right, so I found the comments. So earlier I put in the question, are you ashamed or proud of slavery? And here's some of the comments that I got. Winifred Jackson said, I could and can never be proud of slavery. We have Shamel Taylor, who is pinned as a top fan. That must mean Shamel is here all the time. It looks like it's a guy. Ashamed of slavery can't be. They enslaved us. They should be ashamed. And not proud either. Proud that some overcame, but many have psychological difficulties adapting due to slavery in modern times, such as black on black crime, crabs in the barrel, etc. Proud of slavery is just bad wording to me. Can never be proud of something that brought pain and suffering with more pain and disadvantage as the aftermath. Very interesting. Another top fan, Connie Hagens, both proud to be descendant of kings and queens, ashamed that it has been forgotten. So she said both proud and ashamed. Sean Malik said, why would anyone be proud of slavery? Some Nimra, Asmussen, why ashamed? The work of enslaved people built this country. Without us, the Americas would be nothing. Okay, so those are some of the comments that we got earlier. And I want to jump into the question that Sean Malik posed. Why would anyone be proud of slavery? Well, you know how I am. I like to get into the semantics and really try to break these things down. Hi, Craig. Hi, Craig Muhammad says, peace, beautiful black queen. Andrew, filmmaker Williams, shalom, shalom back to you, and peace to you, Craig. Codell Douglas says, when you look at what people endured, you have to be proud. Beverly Wright, hello, Darlene. And Beverly Wright also says, I am not proud. So I want to see you guys continue to put your comments in. I really want this to be an interactive discussion because we have been seeing this new Harriet Tubman trailer is circulating around. She is one of the ADOS heroes, and for those of you who don't know what ADOS means, it is American Descendants of Slaves, which I am proud to be an American descendant of slavery. And, you know, people are feeling some kind of way about the fact that we have an actress portraying one of our heroes, our ADOS heroes, and she herself is from Britain. if I'm not mistaken, but she's definitely not ADOS in the traditional meaning of what that terminology is politically to us today. And so there has been some controversy over some quotes and different things that they dug up from her. I think it was Twitter or Instagram. I'm not sure which one, but some posts she made that was kind of disparaging towards Black Americans, ADOS. And so, there's been some debate going on about whether or not we should have someone who is of ADOS descent portraying one of our heroes. And it kind of got me and a friend of mine, we were talking this weekend and we started to discuss, obviously Tone Talks and Yvette Carnell and some others have been live streaming about this and have brought up some really amazing points that I'm not going to get deep into in this particular discussion. But what it did is it led off to me and one of my close girlfriends kind of talking about the films that have come out recently. And we started to touch upon the film Birth of a Nation by Nate Parker. Nate Parker did that film, and he is ADOS as far as I know. And when he put out this film about another great ADOS hero, Nat Turner, who started a revolution. If you haven't seen that film, Birth of a Nation, and make sure it's the more recent one, because the original Birth of a Nation was a film about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and was a very strong propaganda film. So you know that I'm betting that Nate named his film Birth of a Nation because he wanted to kind of do another propaganda film as far as Black people understanding how Christianity, if you guys don't know the story of Nat Turner. Oh my gosh, that's that's just messing me up because it's Nate Parker and then Nat Turner. Basically, Nat Turner was a preacher during a very tough time where it was an economic crisis and they weren't feeding the slaves, but they were still working them. And what they did was they took the preachers around. They realized that Nat had a gift. He was an orator and he could speak to people about, religion and God and kind of preach from the Bible. And something clicked inside him when he saw that he was giving people this false sense of security, even though they were starving these slaves, and working them to death. And that's when he had that epiphany that these, the people who were enslaving them were evil and needed to be destroyed, and that he could free his people by devising a plan and kind of, becoming a vigilante. And unfortunately, we had a traitor among us during that time, and he wasn't able to carry out the plan to fulfillment, but he did make some headway. And I just wanted to mention that because I feel that the shame that we felt, a lot of us, because I was trying to tell people, I saw the film and I was like, this is a really amazing film. It was a great follow-up to 12 Years a Slave, if you ask me, because 12 Years a Slave gave us the feeling, like you were able to feel and see what it was like, even though it wasn't an ADOS actor. It was Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is from, I think, England, maybe Nigerian descent. I'm not sure what his lineage is, but I know he's a British actor. He really gave us a great portrayal. We have Lupita Nyong'o, who won the Academy Award. The film itself won an Academy Award, and the screenwriter, who is ADOS, John Ridley, he got an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. So that film and those portrayals, and the director, Steve McQueen, is British. So we kind of had a mixed bag there in terms of representation. And a lot of people, I remember talking to people when 12 Years a Slave came out, and there was a lot of anger and a lot of shame around that film. People didn't want to see it. People saw it reluctantly. And then when Birth of a Nation came out, it's almost like we got an out when the powers that be decided to bring up some very old charges where Nate Parker had been acquitted from a rape charge, and they started bringing that out, and it just kind of threw a shadow onto the film. And it was unfortunate because I think that a lot of us took that out of feeling ashamed and didn't want to see another slave film. I remember people talking about that. And so that was a little tangent I wanted to go off on because I want to come back to that later in the discussion. Let's get into the semantics, right? You know I like to do that so we can be clear about what it is we're discussing. So what is a slave? According to Google, a slave is a person who is legal property of another and is forced to obey them. The second meaning is a person or work excessively hard. To work excessively hard is the slave. So that's kind of like slave as a verb, and then slave as a noun is a person who is legal property of another and is forced to obey them. Okay, now let's get into what does it mean to be proud, right? So let's talk about what does it mean to be proud. So the first definition, according to Google, is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction as a result of one's own achievements, qualities, or possessions, or those of someone with whom one is closely associated. Okay, and then the second definition is having or showing a high or excessively high opinion of oneself or one's importance. So that's what it means to be proud, right? Now let's get into ashamed. What does it mean to be ashamed? Ashamed is to be embarrassed or guilty of one's actions and characteristics or associations. And then that comes from the root word of shame, and that is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. Okay? The second definition is a loss of respect or esteem, dishonor. So shame can be like a dishonor, right? A loss of respect, a loss of esteem, and it's painful. Proud is a feeling of pleasure or satisfaction. Okay, so let's get into this, guys. Let's get into this. It's a little hot in here. What does it mean? Are we ashamed of slavery, or are we proud to be descendants of slaves? Are we ashamed of being descendants of slaves, or are we proud? Now I'm going to give it back to you guys and see what you have to say, and then we're going to jump into this. So Claudel Douglas says, when you look at what people endured, you have to be proud. Okay, that is a perspective, right? Beverly says, hello. Hey, Beverly. She says she's not proud. Okay, we got you, Beverly. We got Dean Beeman, Lynette Davis here. I'd love to hear what you, Dean, I know you're here every week. Let's hear what you have to say about this. Craig Muhammad, I can never be proud of my people's suffering. Boom, let's get into it. So we got one person that says, when you look at what our people endured, you have to be proud. And then that would be Claudel. And then we have Craig who says, I could never be proud of my people's suffering. Okay, so if we're talking about feelings of deep pleasure or satisfaction as a result of one's own achievements or qualities or possessions, or those of someone with whom we are closely associated. So if we are ADOS, American descendants of slaves, can we feel pleasure or satisfaction, deep pleasure or satisfaction of the results of the achievements, the qualities and possessions of our ancestors who endured slavery? Personally, I'm going to say yes. I feel that I agree with Claudel, who says when you look at what our people endured and survived, and in certain instances thrived. Now, we may not be where we want to be today as a community. However, there were instances in history, and that's why it's important that we know our history. And I would say the story of Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner to a certain extent are examples of that, not to mention Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, and many, many others. George Washington Carver, I forget the guy's name who did the heart surgery. Even though he was not a slave, he was dealing with segregation at the time and very, very heavy racism over at Johns Hopkins when he was a janitor, but really in there doing heart surgery and getting no credit for it. They were stealing all his ideas and he wasn't getting paid or anything. So we want to look at that, and I look at that and I say, I am proud to know that I come from a people who built a great country, who built great institutions. We're responsible for the railroads. We're responsible for the economic system. I think Dr. Boyce has talked about how the stock market is related to slavery in some way. So the stock market wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for the economic. And please forgive me, I know I'm probably not saying this in the best terms, but you guys kind of feel what I'm getting at. We are descendants of people, the strongest people in this world, I dare to say. And that is why America is the greatest country in the world. Debatable at this, particular point. People have things that they could say that would debate that. But in general, we have rose as a country to be a superpower and be the greatest economic force on this planet that this planet has ever seen. And that is due to African descendants who became American descendants of slavery, right? I would have to say that there is something in there to be proud of. And what I think there is to be proud of is the endurance, the creativity, the faith, the vision to see ourselves out of that situation. And even though we are still enduring systematic racism, systematic systems, that are just constantly, some of us are being bombarded with daily in our daily lives, in our work situations, in our family, our school. Even though it is insidious, we have still strived. And if it wasn't for us thriving, even though it may not look like it in certain instances, we have to admit that we are still here, we are still moving forward, and we are the leaders in revolutionary movements. It was our movements in this country that inspired many movements around the world for people to rise up against their oppressors, their governments. You look at the LGBT community, they tried to co-opt our movement in many ways. They were using Martin Luther King's image and his quotes at certain points when they were trying to move their stuff forward. The women's movement came over, and when they weren't making as much headway as they wanted to, they came and grabbed Black women, American descendants of slaves, and tried to pull them into the mix so they could have more force and power. That is something to be proud of. Not the fact that people have co-opted our situations in various forms throughout history, but the fact that we are the originators of a lot of science, a lot of medical and health advances, that we built the infrastructure of this country, and it has been strong and going strong for hundreds of years now, that a lot of the things creatively, music, there is no American culture without Black culture. And that goes from literature to music to dance to art to fashion. And some of the biggest export that we have right now in America is entertainment. And who are the leaders in entertainment? The sports fields. There is something to be proud of there. And I think one of the biggest hoodwinks that has happened, or enslavement of the mind, so to speak, is to try to shame us about our past, and the past, how our ancestors were enslaved. So I'm here tonight to kind of open up that discussion and see where we can dissect this and kind of remove and get away from feeling ashamed of slavery, of the past, of our history, and start to embrace it and see the things in it where we can be proud, where we can feel deep pleasure and satisfaction about the results of the achievements of our people under extreme circumstances. Okay, now we have the Jewish people who have experienced the Holocaust. And one thing, when my girlfriend and I were discussing this weekend, we kind of noted was that, you look at what happened to the Jews, etc. And one thing that we both kind of noticed is that their survivors of the Holocaust were held up, They recorded their stories. They made movies about them and gave them awards, right? They did documentaries. They erected all of these Holocaust museums all across the nation, not to mention the main one that's down on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. If you've never been, you should definitely check it out. It is amazing. It's a sight to see the way that they have, documented everything. And they took those people who were survivors and they celebrated them. They celebrated those people every chance they got. They worked towards helping them to receive some sort of reparations and while they were living, to help recover the art and the different things that were stolen from them, the property. They worked towards getting a land for their descendants over in Israel. That's just an example of something we can look at and say, there was a group of people who went through something not nearly as long as we did, and maybe arguably, people can argue about the intensity of one experience versus another. I'm not going to get into that. But what I'm saying is that we as a people, American descendants of slaves, foundational Blacks, Native Black Americans, however you want to label yourself, maybe there's something that we can glean from that to see how we could remove the shame, right? And shame is being embarrassed or guilty because of one's actions or characteristics associated with certain behaviors. Why should we be ashamed of the greatness of our people to be able to endure that? And even to this day, America would be nothing without the work, the drive, the endurance, the triumph of the human spirit of our ancestors who were held in captivity, born in captivity, died in captivity, and eventually were freed and continue to move forward and fight different obstacles to even get us to where we are today. There is something to be proud of there. There is something to feel pleasure and satisfaction about, or at least that's my take on it. Now let me throw it back to you. But before I do that, I want to say thank you so much to everyone at FlyNubianQueen.com for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of this platform and open up discussions such as this with beautiful kings and queens here tonight, every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time. My name is Deena Jacobs. You can follow me on Instagram at Deena Jacobs Flaunts at DEENA Jacobs JACOBS FLAUNTS. If you guys want to get your money right, you should go to flynubianmoney.com. If you got a business idea, go to flynubianbusiness.com. And if you haven't checked us out on iTunes yet, please get on over to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast at flynubianqueen.com and check out our new and growing network for melanated men, which is flynubiankingtv.com. So let me check out some of these comments. I got 42 comments in here. So let's move it on down. We have Beverly Wright. She's not proud. I can never be proud of my people suffering. Mia Evans says, good evening. Lisa James says, proud of my ancestors who endured for us all to be here. Never ashamed. We were kidnapped, killed, raped from our homeland. That's kind of the point I'm making here. Craig Muhammad, but she is Black. I think he's referring to the Harriet Tubman comment. Beverly Wright says, great movie. Are you referring to Birth of a Nation? Because if you guys are talking about boycotting Harriet Tubman, which I think that is a good way to make your voices and your opinions heard, you got to hit them in their pockets and let them know how you feel one way or the other. If you support it, then you put your money where your mouth is. If you don't support it, then you keep your money in your pocket. And let your lack of spending money and using your Black spending power, they're always using that term, you can use that by boycotting. That was used very effectively during the Civil Rights Movement, along with other tactics. Eddie Johnson says he's boycotting the movie. Birth of a Nation by Nate Parker. We should be holding screenings, in my opinion, on the day that the Harriet Tubman film comes out so that we can support an ADOS who put his own money behind a film, produced it. I think he might have wrote it, if I'm not mistaken, and then starred in it and brought like Gabrielle Union and a lot of ADOS actors and actresses. He didn't have that big, broad British cast. He brought American descendants of slaves, foundational Black descendants, into the film to really give it the authenticity that it needed. And so, you know, I almost want to say shame on us for not supporting, but I'm not here to bring any further shame. I'm here to lift us into a place of being proud, a place of feeling satisfaction and pleasure about the achievements that we have made, and kind of give us a little bit more discernment. I want us to talk and kind of come to a place of discernment where we can better pick and choose like our fights, our battles, and understand what should be celebrated, and come together to celebrate who we are. I remember when I was younger, we used to really celebrate, like Black History thing, growing up in DC, Black History was really celebrated in school, in the libraries, in the jobs, everywhere in the city. It used to be Chocolate City back then. They were celebrating in February Black History, and it wasn't just like, oh, happy Black History Month, and that was it. There were essays we had to read. There were programs where, you know, we would do reenactments as kids of we would have to pick, you know, an ancestor who was an inventor or a business person or a musician or a writer or a thinker of some sort or some kind of amazing person. Maybe they were a person who did a revolt or something, an abolitionist, Frederick Douglass. How often is he talked about nowadays? Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. We had all these heroes that we celebrated during Black History Month. They even used to have specials on network television where they have like Lou Gossett Jr. and, you know, the big Black name actors of that day singing, doing skits and things just to celebrate, singing the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. When's the last time you heard somebody or some kids do a performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing? It used to be our national Black anthem, so to speak. All that stuff, you know, had controversy around it at certain points in times, but there was a pride that was there. There was a pride, there was a pleasure, there was a satisfaction to know that who we were, who our ancestors were, what they endured, and how they moved through that, the ones that survived it to move on to where we can be born and manifested today. There was a pride in that, in knowing our history. That has been lost somewhere along the way, probably by design. It has been dissipated, right? And so what I'm saying is now we can go back and we can see, hey, maybe we need to rethink that Nate Parker thing, because they keep picking non-ADOS people to portray our heroes and tell the stories of our heroes. And in general, when we look at those films that have been made about the Holocaust, in general, it is portrayed by descendants of either the Holocaust or people who are of the Jewish lineage. Usually it's written and directed by those people, and typically they're based on true stories. And they get awarded and they get celebrated and they get shown over and over again. That's what we can do to begin to make peace and remove shame from that. Instead of going to see the Harriet Tubman movie, why don't we hold our own personal screenings in our homes, in our community centers of Birth of a Nation, and give that support to an ADOS who put his own money, time, and energy behind telling the very amazing story of Nat Turner, who was a revolutionary during the slavery era and sparked up a very effective revolt, although it was ultimately stamped out by a traitor. There's something to be learned from that story. And there's something to be learned from the recent story of how they shut that down. And now we can go back and reclaim and support that film. So that's just an idea and a thought that I had that I wanted to share with you guys. Let me get back into your comments. So we have Samad L, I'm proud of all ancestors who resisted to give us life. So at all costs, I represent them in positivity, strength, and pride. Thank you for that. Sean Malik, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of lost. What does ADOS mean? I'm assuming some abbreviation of African American. I've tried to say it a few different times for people like you, Sean. ADOS is American Descendants of Slaves. Some of us identify that as a way to kind of differentiate between those of us who actually have lineage back to slavery versus some of us who, as African Americans or Black Americans, who maybe they only go back a generation or two. Basically, they're immigrants they didn't go through slavery, at least in America. Maybe their people went through slavery or oppression in some other places like the Caribbean or in Africa or in Europe somewhere, but we're specifically focusing on, we're getting more focused in on who we are, so that as a group, so that, you know, we can make the demands and receive what it is that we are long overdue. And so that in that way, you need to kind of start distinguishing who is who, so that it's not watered down like it has been in the past, say with affirmative action and things like that, where you're talking about people of color, and then next thing you know, you have white women and white gay men who are somehow qualified under those programs. So that's why people are getting really specific and calling it ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves, or Foundational Blacks, or Native Black Americans. So hopefully that cleared it up for you a little bit. Hey, Victor Trammell. Oh, it's so good to see you too. Thank you for joining me. Tanisha Armstrong says she's ashamed. Now, baby, talk to me. Those of you, after I just gave that diatribe, those of you who are still ashamed, let's talk about that. Let's see where you're coming from. I want to understand how you could feel ashamed at this point. Because we want to try to remove that shame from you and help you to gain some pride around your heritage. Okay, so we have Craig Muhammad says he agrees. I think that was a while back, so I'm not sure what he agrees with, but okay. Craig Muhammad, if it wasn't for our ancestors, this country wouldn't be what it is today. At least I think so. I mean, come on, even they can't BS about that. That's what, if anyone's going to be ashamed, it should be the descendants of slaveholders. Okay, that's my personal opinion. Okay, you can agree, not agree, whatever, however you want to feel about it. But if anyone should be feeling ashamed, it should be the descendants of the slave owners, the heirs to the throne, so to speak, the heirs of the plantations, the heirs of all the businesses and all the brokerages and all of the institutions that were built upon our ancestors' backs. Those are the people who should be feeling ashamed of slavery, not the descendants, not the descendants. It's like telling the people who are descendants of survivors of Holocaust that they should be ashamed. Ashamed of what? What are they going to be ashamed of? Hitler? Germans feel some shame. I don't know if they still do to this day, but I know at certain points there was a certain amount of shame that Germans felt about, you know, the fact that Hitler was allowed to rise to power and wreak the havocs that he did. So if anybody's going to be ashamed, it should be those who are continuing to allow these systems to be in place without speaking up against them, without doing anything to right the wrongs. So I think the shame has been displaced and again has been put upon us as a people, as the descendants, that we should be ashamed of slavery. We should be ashamed that our people were in captivity, that we should be ashamed that we haven't, you know, gotten to the highest heights of, you know, economic freedom, of economic empowerment, of self-determination. Yeah, there's some things that we can do better in those areas, but I think one of the first steps is to gain perspective on what it is that happened and what it means to be a descendant, to come out of something like that and be here today, still standing, still moving forward, and still pushing towards the ultimate goals of reparations, restoration, and upliftment of our people in so many different areas I can't even begin to expand. And again, I'm not an expert on these things. I'm just a woman who has had some experiences and done a little bit of reading and listening, which is the biggest thing, to try to understand where we are in this today. So it is 7:34. I'm going to get into your comments some more. Bryce Stevens, I am proud that my Nigerian ancestry was strong enough to survive and have the ability to be woke right now. Okay, Bryce. Dean Beeman, understanding history often leads to a brighter future. Unfortunately, many don't end up repeating a form of bondage. Unfortunately, many don't end up repeating a form of bondage. Okay. Trying to understand what you're saying there, Dean. I appreciate your comment. You're saying understanding history often leads to a brighter future. I agree. It's something called lest we forget. And also, I want to touch upon Sankofa. That is a terminology that I think originated, it's like an African proverb, but I'm not sure exactly where it comes from. But hold on, let me look that up real quick. It's called go back and get it. Go back and get it, okay? Sankofa is a word in the Twi language of Ghana that translates into go back and get it, right? To fetch, to seek and take, and also refers to a Asante Indikra symbol represented either by a stylized heart shape or by a bird with its head turned backwards while its feet face forward, carrying a precious egg in its mouth. Sankofa is often associated with the proverb. I'm not going to try to read that Twi language, which translates as, it is not wrong to go back for that which you have forgotten. Do you hear that? Sankofa is, it is not wrong to go back for that which you have forgotten. We may, as a people, have forgotten who we are. Now, going back even further beyond slavery, we should dig into that history too, because from there we will gain some pride, knowing that we are some of the originators of the sciences, the arts, the languages, the culture, which still permeates today. Again, there is no American culture without Black culture. Ado's culture is the quintessential American culture. Even look at tap dancing. Tap dancing is some kind of in between Irish. You know how the Irish do that little dance where they're, jumping up and down and they're not moving their arms. I don't know the technical term for it, so please forgive me. I don't want to offend. But if you look at that and then you look at how Black people were doing tap dancing and how they pulled that together and made it into something brand new and original and cool, and everybody's trying to do it, that is us. We are the original creative people. And that's why they tried to do the indentured servitude with, white people coming over here working to get here, and okay, you're going to work for 10 years and work the land. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't do it. So they had to scrap that idea. Then they tried to get, the Native Americans to do it. The Native Americans were like, I don't think so. We're not about to be over here working this land. We love the land. We're not going to do all that. And then next thing you know, they're like, well, who can we get to endure this heat, who is smart enough to help us run these plantations and understands horticulture and animal husbandry and understands, how the earth moves and the weather patterns, and can help us make this thing work and build this textile industry and this agricultural industry. Who was that? That was us. That was the descendants of slavery. That was the people who were enslaved and who originated on the continent of Africa, right? So we need to practice and enforce Sankofa. We need to pull that in, and with that comes a certain sense of pride. It is not wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of to go back for that which you have forgotten. And we have forgotten a lot of our history, and it's because it's shrouded in shame. So we got to release the shame. We got to let go of the painful feelings of humiliation and distress caused by a consciousness of wrongdoing or foolish behavior. What that foolish behavior that we're associating with slavery are the stereotypes, the shucking and jiving, the what do you call it? The coonery, right? The buffoonery, the hoodwinking that they did on us, right? The jigabooing and the blackface and all that stuff that caused Black people to feel ashamed because they were portraying us in a foolish way, when to the contrary, why would you have a foolish, idiotic, lazy people building your country? That's the furthest thing you're going to do, is go and pick up some foolish, lazy people and be like, yeah, we're going to force them to work. You're going to pick up some people, because they tried to do that with those indentured servants, and that wasn't working. It was not working. It did not work. It failed, and they had to come up with a new idea. They had to come up with something new. They had to go get some people who were smart and capable and who could endure, and that was us. Now, that was their evil genius in being able to figure that part out, and then to pull the wool over our eyes and make us feel shame in being those people, right, in the past. Now, there's a lot that goes into slavery. It was systematic, and there were reasons why we weren't able to get out of it. And there were ones of us who did try, such as Nat Turner, and failed, but he made a very noble attempt. And some of the strategies and tactics that he came up with are very useful. We should go back and get it. Sankofa. It is not wrong to go back for that which you have forgotten. And we have forgotten our history. We have forgotten about Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. Why aren't we playing that song all the time? It's nice to play some Black love songs from the 60s and 70s, but where are those Black empowerment songs? Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And what about that song, Be Real Black for Me, Roberta Flack and I think Bobby, I forget his name, but you know, some of those songs where we really celebrate who we are as a people from the 60s and 70s. Why aren't those songs being remade or rehashed or, you know, continuing to be played? I remember when I was young, we heard those type of songs all the time. And where are those songs now? They've been replaced by things that could be considered to be shameful. So maybe we need to go back and get it, okay? So let me get back into these comments, because I definitely want to hear more of what you guys have to say. Daniel Hale Williams, the first open heart surgery was performed by Daniel Hale Williams. Jeannie Hale, is that your great-granddaddy or your granddaddy? Thank you for reminding us of that. I remember Mos Def and Ados, and he gave an amazing performance that should have won an Emmy, honestly, because he played that with so much heart, especially with him being a rapper. And I think also he had some acting in his background as well. Mos Def portrayed Daniel Hale Williams in that film. It was called Something the Lord Made, and it was an HBO film. And see, these are the type of films we need to be screening. If you guys want to boycott Harriet Tubman, then on that night of that premiere that weekend, we need to be holding screenings in our homes, our community centers, etc., where we're showing films that tap into our history and give us that Sankofa moment, where we can celebrate who have been portrayed by ADOS, those films that we neglected at the time to give the support to. That's something that we can do as well. So besides just sitting home and saying, I'm not going to see a Harriet movie because that British chick is fine. I don't know who she is, who she thinks she is. Instead of doing just that, okay, fine, you've made the decision that you're going to boycott. Now let's do something where we can be proud and we can say, you know what, let's go do a screening of Birth of a Nation by Nate Parker. Let's go do a screening of Something the Lord Made. Let's do a screening of the movie that was made by Mario Van Peebles called Panther, which gives us some insight into the Black Panther movement, and Huey P. Newton, who was portrayed by Marcus Chung, another ADOS. So what we need to be, what we can be thinking about, I'm not gonna say what we need to do, I'm just giving you guys suggestions of things that we can do as a community. And I see we have about 20 people in this live stream right now, right? And I appreciate you guys for being here, all 20 of you, because that's all we need. That's all it takes is a couple of seeds to go back into the community and say, hey, this is something that we can do to remove the shame and increase the pride and the deep feelings of pleasure, satisfaction as the result of the achievements of some of our greatest. And it's not just about Jackie Robinson and sports. Yeah, that's great in and of itself. It's not just about Muhammad Ali. He was great. Yes, it's easy to take a sports figure, right? But what about those people in the sciences, like a Daniel Hale Williams? The first open heart surgery. That white man couldn't get it. The white doctors were in there trying to figure it out. How are we going to do this? They killing people left and right. And the next thing you know, this brother comes in and saves a life. Henrietta Lacks. They butchered that story. I'm sorry, Oprah. Y'all butchered that story. Okay, because there was a better story to be told about what happened to Henrietta Lacks. But okay, at least, you know, they put forth an effort. But maybe we could do something where we get into that story even more. You know, there's so many great stories out here that there are movies that have been made, documentaries that have been made. Let's open up the archives, guys. Let's bust open the archives and pull out some of those old DVDs, some of those streaming services where these films are. Let's go to the library. Let's go online to Craigslist and get us a working DVD player or a VHS, and we got to do some screenings, because it's time for us to have that pride about being descendants of slaves. There's the time for being ashamed is over. Dead, played out. That's not what it is anymore. The time for Black pride is here again, and we got to raise it up to an even more powerful thing. I am proud to be an American descendant of slave. When I see a film like 12 Years a Slave, I'm angry and I'm ready to hurt some people. However, I also feel proud that that man was able to come out of that and be of sound mind after going through the hell that he went through, to everything to break his spirit, his mind, his body, and being able to sit down and say, you know what, I got to tell this story. I have to tell this story. There's a purpose and a reason. He had the vision to see that there was a reason why he went through that. And he was able to write that story so that today we could know that a free man could be snatched back into slavery. And we saw that happen with the prison industrial complex. Go watch 13th. Yes, I'm sure a lot of us have seen it, but you know, that's something that we can screen as well. But we need to dig back even further. We need to go back and realize that it is not wrong, and there is nothing to be ashamed of, to go back for that which you have forgotten. Okay, so, hold on. I got to charge my computer, y'all. Give me a second. I only got a little bit of juice. Hold on.